I do want to give you a little brief background on Dr. Mark McLellan before he speaks. We do expect that after he speaks there'll be time for a few questions. And we do hope that you will also take advantage of looking at the poster sessions outside for more information on various topics related to open access. Dr. McLellan serves as the Dean for Research and the Director of the Florida Agricultural Experiment Station within the Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences, or as we affectionately call it here, IFAS. He reports to the Senior Vice President for Agriculture and Natural Resources. He's responsible for administering and providing statewide leadership for research programs in agriculture, natural resources, food, and human resource research programs across 16 academic departments. Additionally, he directs and administers the Florida Agricultural Experiment Station, including 13 research and education centers throughout the state. Dr. McLellan holds the academic rank of Professor in the Department of Food Science and Human Nutrition, and also serves as a member of the Board of Directors for the Food Update Foundation. Both as a researcher and administrator in this land-grant university, Dr. McLellan is keenly aware of the significance of public access to information and the role of open access in serving the public. IFAS has its own information database called EDIS, and these documents are open access and available to all. Dr. McLellan was a primary supporter of the establishment of the Open Access Publishing Fund, and I hope you will join me in welcoming him, and we all look forward to his remarks.
Well, thank you all. Appreciate the opportunity to come and speak. You probably should be asking about right now why an agricultural guy coming to talk about open access. And I guess I'll just start by saying it's from the heart. It's what we do. It's what we are. And I hope in this brief time of chatting with you, I get some of that across to you and help explain why when the idea of an open access fund first sort of popped up here, I really tried to be one of the first to say, hey, this is just the right thing to do. And sometimes it's got to be that straightforward. It's the right thing to do. I appreciate the leadership, Judith, you've given to this, and Isabel, a wonderful captain to have in the ranks making things happen. And I know you've been instrumental behind the scenes. IFAS is a large organization. We are about 2,000 employees, 900 faculty. Half of our tenure-track faculty do not reside on this campus. Half of them are out in the state at our research and education centers, which makes for a daunting issue of communicating. And after all, is an open access fundamentally a communication issue? We have presence in 67 counties. We manage well over 1,000 buildings, and believe it or not, we have about 23,000 acres of land that we oversee, most of that involved in research operations. So yeah, it's an interesting challenge, but inherently in a system so diverse and so expansive like that, you really need to have a commitment to an open flow of information. Now, if you're like me, and you're not a librarian, and you just happen to believe in this a little bit, you tend to Google some of these things real quick. And I hit a most interesting website that I wanted to point you to. And that was a website by a young PhD student, Heather Morrison. She's at Simon Fraser University. And I want to read just a very brief glimpse off her blog that focuses on open access. She says, and I quote, "Imagine a world where anyone can instantly access all of the world's scholarly knowledge. As profound a change really as the invention of the printing press. Technically, this is within reach. All that is needed is a little imagination to reconsider the economics of scholarly communications from a poetic point of view." How neat. It should make you stop. It should make you think. And certainly did myself. This is in a blog that she posts called The Imaginary Journal of Poetic Economics. This would be an interesting lady to get to know. Open access, as you understand, is the unrestricted online access to articles. And we've got many classic elements that illustrate this. Probably the most dramatic in the physics literature, the XRXVic database that's hosted at Cornell, the new UF repository, and many, many others. And of course, as you've already heard, we in IFAS maintain one ourselves called EDIS. Our dilemma really is, from a researcher's perspective, is that we've built a middleman. And the middleman, of course, is sort of the elephant in the room. It's called the publisher. And generally, the publisher system we've built is for-profit. Researchers are, of course, generally not for-profit. We're simply interested in getting our information out. But it takes really effort to do that. We want to be careful here that we don't simply take that quantum leap and ignore the effort that goes into producing a journal. Having been a president of a society that does that, I'm acutely aware of what those costs are and what it takes to build that. Nevertheless, we have also built inside this system something near and dear to us as researchers, and that is, of course, the peer review process that generally is managed through the editorial process of those journals. This is an imperative that process be somehow retained, invigorated, and managed in a way that it still retains that high degree of functionality. We have also built, by nature of these journals, a hierarchy of quality, often based on citations or all kinds of indices, and I won't get into all of that. But we, the researchers, have sort of cheered that on in some ways, saying, okay, it's nice to know that, you know, the paper that I spent incredible amount of my career to build is really pointed to as that seminal piece, and others, might be smaller pieces that are not so. So this is important, and open access is a part of us in the academy, and has been really since the Dark Ages, when we've really come out and started trying to get information out to those that need it. Here at the University of Florida, I would say it's in our blood. And let me remind you why it's in your blood. We are a land-grant institution. It was back in 1862 that President Abraham Lincoln signed the Morrill Act. Justin Morrill was a state representative from Vermont who really pushed the idea that, you know what, it's time we have institutions that are there for the citizen. Institutions that are focused on agriculture, engineering, military science, and all of the other scientific and, quote, classical studies. That's actually the terms they use. So it was envisioned that the United States, it's time to move forward and to bring education to the citizens. This is 1862, and in 1884, the Florida Agricultural College in Lake City was established, and that was based on 30,000 acres that were allocated by the federal government to the state of Florida, and then they sold those acres and created the Agricultural College. And of course, that is the beginning of the University of Florida. The land-grant institutions in general have an inherent commitment, a sort of a gut reaction, or in your heart, depending on how hard your day's been. A commitment to being very real, to being tangible and relatable, connected from the gut to the citizen, to make a difference, to figure a solution, to bring an expansiveness of knowledge for those to enjoy. How many of you have paused for a minute and looked at the University of Florida's motto, that you didn't even know we had a motto? We do. We have a motto. And the motto of this university is, quote, "The welfare of the state depends upon the morals of its citizens." The welfare of the state depends upon the morals of the citizen. When this motto was put in place in this great university, it was acutely focused at the citizens of this state? How are we going to make a difference for them? How are we going to improve their welfare, change their welfare? And I think that says a lot, because what it says is in the classical arts, the poet that is composing a moving piece on life, or the nurse who is just graduated and taking a job in a cardiac intensive care, or the engineer who is designing the next micro satellite, or the agronomist who's growing a better peanut, or the economist who's trying to figure out small town governance. All of these faculty, all of them, are inherently focused on the citizen, whether that citizen be here in Alachua County, in the state of Florida, a citizen of these United States, or the world. For us, open access is important. It's critical, and it has been a part of our life as this university since the very beginning. In the Agricultural Experiment Station, we follow three primary drivers in what we do, and open access has a link to each of them. To be a true leader, to be a game changer, we drive for discovery. We really ask our faculty to be explorers, to push the envelope, and to share that knowledge, and to stand on the shoulders of those that have gone before them, to really reach and figure out a new way, a new piece of information that's going to open doors for us. That does not happen by itself, and open access is critical to make sure that what we do is not something that's already been done, that what we do, in fact, leads from the greatness of that has gone before us. The second thing that drives us is innovation. We try to take a look at what is being discovered and shift it in paradigms, shift it through our world to find out where it may have greatest impact. And again, open access allows us to do that without any stone being unturned. We're able to look further, deeper into the possibilities of innovations that come from our work. And then finally, of course, applications. Where can we make a difference? Where can we get it out there? Where can we drive the solution so it'll be utilized, so it'll be worked on? And open access, as we indicated already, is a critical part of what we do using our EDIS system, is precisely for that effort, to connect with the citizens and to move it out. Our challenges are extraordinarily profound, and they have been profound for quite some time. Knowing I had this talk to give, I went back to one of my predecessors. This is the Florida Agricultural Experiment Station Bulletin for the citizens of the state of Florida, #1. First one ever produced. And this was published in 1888, just a few short years after the beginning, by Dr. Cost, who is my predecessor. Now I just want to read you one small quote from his introduction. This is the first bulletin put out by this university to say, here's the information we need to get out to citizens. He says, quote, "But we are fully resolved to do our part to prove the wisdom of those far-seeing men in Congress." That might be a little bit different than today, but that's okay. Far-seeing men in Congress who secured the means to effect this great national enterprise. The American people must ever be known as in the front rank in those great national movements that promote the highest civilization and the chief good of humanity. The first open access, get it to the people, bring it to the farmer, make a difference. And that's what our institution has been all about. Whether it's a poet, a nurse, an engineer, an agronomist, we are all focused on that. We have our challenges, no doubt. Our states are struggling mightily to support these institutions called the public land-grant institutions. And indeed, our world is changing. There are many of our sister universities that by the end of these next handful of years will be a shadow of themselves. And we will be great fortunate if we survive this process in reasonable shape. U.S. in general struggles. It struggles to educate a youth that will be competitive. And I think it's important that in a greater, broader issue of how we communicate, how we share information, that we keep in mind some of our challenges. In agriculture, we have farmers in this country that feed the world. They get up in the morning and their first thought has nothing to do with the United States of America. It has everything to do with how does this crop get overseas. And we have other farmers that grow up every day, that wake up every day, and their first thought is, how do I move my product into the U.S. market? Hugely different markets. One aimed at simply getting calories to 6 billion people, 1 billion of which last night, went to bed hungry. Just as a reminder, that's 1,000 millions of people went to bed hungry last night. So we have our challenges. Things are not as smooth and easy on a global basis of humanity, and we need every advantage, including the opportunity for open access. Food's an interesting subject. For like our science, the subject of open access is important to us, and food, whether it's a hunger for food or a hunger for knowledge, it's really right to the gut. And when President Matcham, in his State of the University address, basically commissioned us to be a global university, it was like, yeah, hallelujah, let's remember it. And I say remember it particularly because we really, at least in the IFAS world, never forgot. We are intensely focused on global solutions, being a global university as well as a local university, and most particularly as Citizens University. Those that know me know I spent a few years at Cornell University, and one does not walk away from that institution with a lot of earth-shaking parts of you that become anchored. And of course, Ezra Cornell's famous quote when he established Cornell University was that I would found an institution where any person can find instruction in any. Now that, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the most daunting statements that you could ever imagine. Few institutions would dare step up to that. And I would actually say that few really could and can today. But the day will come when we have the ability to move information that indeed this statement can be very true. That anyone could walk into this room here, and through the use of technology and open access to information, they will indeed be able to have a study in any subject. I just came from the World Food Prize being awarded in Des Moines, Iowa. And the World Food Prize is established to recognize those that make a difference in feeding the hungry of this world. And so that's sort of on my brain. It's hard not to walk away from a week of intense detail looking at global issues of food and not have a high degree of sensitivity. But the match over the hunger for knowledge and the hunger for food are very important. This civilization of ours has been through dark times when knowledge was not available, and we must never let it go back to that. We have a lot of opportunity, but a lot of challenges. And each field has their own, whether I'm an engineer looking at materials transfer, heat transfer in materials, whether I'm a health scientist looking at the best healthcare I can deliver, or an agriculturist looking at how to make food more available. We all have those challenges that drive us, and that's not to be diminished. We know that. But the opportunity to really make a difference with open communication is critical. As I indicated 100 years ago, we had started this institution with the public dissemination of the developments, and I read to you from my predecessor's first report. We continue today. We put out brief reports, but of course more importantly, we put out extensive details of our work. And one of these that I want to point you to is done by my sister organization called the Florida Cooperative Extension Service, and that's the EDIS system. The Electronic Document Information System that EDIS represents is a compilation and a distillation, if you would, of some of the best work done in IFAS. And it's brought into a form that's readily available for the citizen. There are currently 7,400 documents in that. It is open for worldwide access, and currently, on an average basis, we have 2.7 million documents opened every 30 days on that server. 2.7 million. To me, that's astounding. Either you've got some phenomenal information that the world wants to get at, or you've got a system that's simply attracted a lot. I don't think it's that pretty that it attracts a lot. I think it's the information that's on it. The point is, we've been in this game of open access, and it's time to really push the limits on this. And that means supporting the UF Institutional Repository, starting to build systems that around that, reaching out to our publishers that we are all aware of, and ask the question, not how, not when, but let's do it. Let's move. And why aren't you already there? I want to end with some thoughts about the changing world of scholarly work, and in particular what I think are the opportunities that these might present. As a researcher and as head of a research environment, you're constantly looking for where do you get the most, how do you help everyone be as successful as they possibly can so that information can get transferred and brought out. And it strikes me that two very, very big things are changing for our faculty, and it almost has minimal to do with their disciplines, but rather a whole lot more to do with society. And first is the issue of immediacy. Our world has changed where the quill and the typeset is just no longer even acceptable in the room. The computer is almost too slow. We are raising children. I have 6 children. Okay, the youngest is 22, and I assure you, my 6 children think differently when they come into a room than I do. They're used to immediate feedback. They're used to high degrees of interaction, and based on that interaction, changing and doing something very quickly. And I think that immediacy is going to move into our disciplines very dramatically, where the scientists that we are creating today will not stand for a slow response. They will want to know what is happening down the hall, across to the other institution, over to the other university, over to the other country, around the globe, and they can do it. We are fast approaching where they can have that immediacy. So I think that's going to drive a lot of what we will see as change. The other thing is intimacy. I believe our faculty are going, because of the immediacy and the way relationships are being built electronically, what you will see is faculty building far quicker intimate relationships with fellow researchers. And disciplines, instead of being broad and being far-flung, and maybe, oh, did you hear about, it will be, last night I was talking to him and he's in Berlin. And yesterday, that was collaborated with my friend in South Africa. And the size of our disciplines' worlds, based on personal relationships, are going to go like this. They're going to collapse very tightly. And that's great hope. It's going to put great strain on us to be able to deliver systems that maximize and take advantage of that. But that's going to be great hope. You know, our world, I think, will change, where we will see, instead of published compendiums, you will see Wikipedias of our particular focus of discipline. Far different. And we will need devices such as Vivo, just to quickly get to know who's around me and what can I do. And these things, this little toy, you know, an iPad, this is straight out of what, you know, those of you who are Star Trek aficionados, this would be the LCAR, you know, the LCAR. And you know, it's amazing to me that in the 23rd century, projected by that program, they still believe there had to be a library access system called the LCAR. So without a question, you know, we're going to need that. But our technology is going to drive us, and our students coming into the future with us are going to insist on that immediacy and intimacy. It's going to drive our sciences very, very adamantly. Well, we are a global university, and I'm thankful we have a president that absolutely embraces that. And as we are seeking global solutions, both to feed a hungry world, we're also seeking solutions to feed hungry minds. And together, that's great stuff. That's all part of what we are, and it certainly meets the heart, and it feeds the gut. Thank you for the opportunity to come talk a little bit about my passion, and appreciate supporting open access.
Questions? Sure. Do we have some questions from the audience or comments that you would like to offer? All right.
I did, just speaking of immediacy, once you mentioned the Bulletin 1, I searched for it, and it is online in the institutional repository.
Ah, good. So we need to make sure it's Anita's as well, so have it in both places. That's great.
Given the mission of our land-grant university, and ICUS in particular, does it scare you the privatization of knowledge that we see happening now? Or do you see that we're going to come out of that okay?
When it comes to the game of knowledge, as I pointed to the elephant in the room, the publisher, the for-profit that entity was built, I think there's always a role, but to me the role is repackage. Taking what is out there publicly available and putting them into a form that might be more enjoyable, more usable, etc., more easily accessible, all of that. If that paradigm, however, were to shift to the point that we, the scientists, become it's strictly a private business entity that's producing, that becomes a little bit more scary. And that's why I raised the worry about our public institutions. We are, the land-grant institutions are the citizens' universities. We are not, University of Chicago, It's a very different type of entity with a very different type of mission and attitude. So I would worry if it's taken that way. Actually, I think there is plenty of room for the private sector to partner, however, with us in order to deliver and figure out ways to make information more easily available. And there you could have all kinds of possibilities.
Other questions or comments?
A comment. I'm Dina. I hope you stay so that I may talk to you about the institutional repository later. We talked about the institutional repository at the University of Florida. That's what I do all the time. I have essentially a replication of EDIS, which came first. If we're talking about the order in which things happen. The university and ICUS, in my mind, basically at the same time. So we got EDIS so that we and the state may know information. Librarians, we meddle. I'm sorry. We said EDIS could be better, but they're busy. Let us make the IR at UF. This is why we have an IR at UF, because of EDIS. We hopefully have all of your documents, and we are able to better serve everybody in this room and everybody not in this room physically, but perhaps virtually, because of all of these things.
Very good. And we hope you have that too, because there's certainly nothing to bind us from sharing that information. I was on the open access website last night, and I was mentioning Isabel. I saw a whole bunch of photos from the University of Pretoria at Johannesburg, and I visited and I was lecturing at Johannesburg back a couple of years ago. And it just struck me how worldwide we're talking about. This is really a movement that's got feet, that's got an engine behind it, and this is only the beginning. We have lots to work out, lots of details. There's devils in the details, but we will get there, and partly because it's just the right thing to do.
I have a small gift for you from the libraries to thank you for participating. It's a Gator Jump Drive, so you can carry a lot of this information around with you and share it with others. But thank you very much for coming and taking the time to join with us. Thanks.